Joining us now, live from Richmond, Virginia, longtime veteran radio news reporter who has covered the Richmond scene and the General Assembly for some time. And now we've got him right. He's going to tell us about the drawing yesterday, and David Yancey wins, and Shelley Simon loses, and Kirk Cox is expected to be the speaker. We're going to get the whole scoop from him right now. Joining us now, live, Tommie McNeil. Tommie, great to have you, man.
Thank you. Good morning, John.
All right, Tommie, let's get to the big drawing yesterday, the coin toss, if you will. We got to see it. It was covered by a lot of the networks. Shelley Simon's coming in second, which means she lost, right? Because it's either win or lose.
Correct.
David Yancey winning. Tell us what that scene was, and just give us your impressions of the whole scene yesterday, the atmosphere and the mood there.
Okay, but it was a very crowded room. People came from all over, especially the media, to cover this event, high-interest event. Leading up to it, as the State Board of Elections gathered and prepared to pull these two names from the lot, believe it or not, I heard some cheering for Shelley, not for David Yancey. I heard some cheering for Shelley Simons, and eventually got quiet. After the names were drawn and David Yancey was declared the winner, there was silence. The only voices you heard were members of the State Board of Elections who talked about the aftermath, talked about Clarabelle Wheeler, the vice chair, talked about the importance of elections, the importance of getting out to vote, and also the significance of making sure you mark your ballot correctly so you don't end up in this situation. But after that, the environment, in my opinion, clearly there was a lot of support for Shelley Simons, and the Democrats really, really wanted this seat, and there wasn't much to be said after this decision.
So let me ask you this. Shelley Simons was there. We saw her when it was covered on some of the networks. Shelley Simons was there with her family, but David was not. He didn't even show up. He figured, I guess he can't influence it. So he didn't bother to show, and he didn't have his supporters there either. Do you think it was odd that David Yancey didn't even bother to show up?
Well, I wondered about that myself, because initially I had heard from someone that he had no intentions of trying to get there. Later, I heard that he attempted to make it there, but because of the snow, it prevented him from making it. So right. I don't know which one is the truth.
Right. Okay. But either way, he was not there. Shelley Simons
he was not there.
Was. So, look, there's been a lot of talk that the Democratic caucus in Virginia and the Simons campaign kind of screwed this up because, they delayed it. So now they delayed it for 8 days, which means that even if she did win, she wouldn't have been seated in time because the David Yancey people said they were going to call for a recount. Has Simons decided now what to do? Are they calling for another recount, or are they just going to let Yancey go ahead and be certified?
Her words were that she's not conceding, that she's reflecting. She appears not to be conceding at this point, which means that we could be looking at another recount. Now, how does that impact the makeup of the upcoming session? Well, Speaker-designate Kirk Cox spoke afterwards. It's a 51, tentatively, 51-49. Even if Shelley decides to call for another recount, Mr. Yancey will not be seated. It still creates a 50 Republican, 49 Democratic legislative body. They will still choose leadership come Wednesday, and they will move forward as if there is a Republican majority. However, you've got two cases here. You've got the potential for Simons to call for another recount, and right now in Stafford County, there's another case to be decided. That's the 28th district, which is ironically the district that retiring Speaker Bill Howe represented for so many years. And that particular election ended up being decided for the Republican in that race, but in favor of Bob Thomas. He won by 73 votes. However, Democrats say that voters, 147 voters, were disenfranchised because they cast ballots in the wrong district.
Right.
So right now up in Stafford County, they're trying to get a judge to call for another election in that race. So that could also toss up the balance of power in the House of Delegates.
Okay, so let's review this, Tommie McNeil. So if Shelley Simons calls for a recount, and I would expect that she would do that. Certainly if I was her, I would. And if I was on the other side of it, if I was David and he lost, I would. Let's just do a recount. I mean, it's tied. The chances of a third recount or second recount mattering and changing anything are probably 1%, but you just got to be sure. So I would expect Shelley Simons to call for a recount, which he has a legal right to do. That's not going to be done before the 10th. I mean, it's already Friday now, so that's not going to get done. That means David Yancey would not get a certificate of election, which means he wouldn't be seated on the 10th when the House organizes. But that still gives Kirk Cox, the designee, speaker, a 50-49 majority, so he's going to get elected speaker with or without Yancey. So then let's get to 28. All right, where the Democrats, as you said, have filed a federal lawsuit for a new election. But Bob Thomas was already declared the winner in the recount by 73, and Thomas in his hand has we understand, certificate of election, right? So he's going to go on the 10th, and he is going to be seated and sworn in. And the only thing that could stop that would be a federal injunction. Is that my understanding?
That is correct. You've got it.
All right, so absent a federal injunction. Now, if there is an injunction and he's not seated, now David's not seated, Thomas is not seated, and then it would be a 49-49 tie at day of organization on the 10th, and then all hell breaks loose. Absent of that, right, Republicans are going to gain control. So here's my question in talking to Republican leadership, so everybody knows that consists of Speaker designee Republican Kirk Cox, Majority Leader Todd Gilbert, and Caucus Chairman Tim Hugo. By the way, the last Republican standing in Northern Virginia, by the way. So are they going to power share, or are they going to be Cox elected Speaker? Cox puts all the committee chairmen in. Cox stacks the committees the way he sees, like Bill Howell did, or are we going to see more of a conciliatory effort on the behalf of Cox and the Republicans? Which will it be?
Cox is moving forward business as usual. We asked him specifically about this case being heard today, and he said he feels very confident about the outcome, and they're moving forward business as usual, as if they maintain the majority. The Republicans maintain a majority.
And so in maintaining that majority, even though it would be 51-49, 50-49, are they going to, is Cox going to, when you say business as usual, is it your sense that Cox and the Republicans are going to go forward as if they had a supermajority or a majority by 10 or whatever, and just stack the committees with and take advantage of the power they have? Or are they going to involve Democratic leadership in some of the decision making? That's my question.
I think moving forward, they're going to stack the deck as much as possible. And the reason being is 2 years from now, there are going to be another set of, elections. Shelley Simons and other Democrats have already said they're gunning for the House. They want control of the House. So if I were Speaker designate Cox, I would run with everything that I possibly could right now. And now we asked about power sharing. We asked about whether or not there would be more concessions, and Cox laid out the Republican agenda, and it doesn't necessarily call for a lot of what the Democrats want. For example, Medicaid expansion. They still want redistricting. I asked specifically about redistricting, and again, Cox said, you know what? if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're going to leave things as they are. They already have an agenda, the Republicans, that they want to roll out, and it's not aligned with what the Democrats want.
So
now, Gilbert, on the other hand, Gilbert did say that he expects to compromise more with Democrats this session.
Mm-hmm. So legislatively speaking, it seems like the Republicans have said, yeah, we're going to work with you guys, but as far as power sharing, that's out. I mean, it's going to be Bill Howe, redux, right? All right, so just point of clarification for our listeners. The House convenes under their rules. They organize the House of Delegates January 10th, Wednesday. They'll be after the prayer breakfast, which is an annual thing. Now, does their reorganization, does that go through 2019? I mean, do they reorganize again January of 2019, or does it hold for 2 sessions until the next election where all the House members are up again?
I believe that it holds until there's some type of shift in power. There's some type of shift in numbers. I don't believe that if something were to happen, if someone were to retire, I don't know whether or not Cox would maintain the speaker position if there were another shift in power.
Got it.
So, yeah.
So, Tommie, basically, if nobody retires or nothing happens and the Republicans have a 51-49 majority, then Cox is going to be the speaker and the Republicans are going to go ahead, like you indicated, Tommie McNeil, business as usual. And then there'll be a new election again. Everybody's up again in 2019, along with the state Senate. And then we'll go through the same thing. But in me talking to Republicans, I want to get your take on this. Their view is that if we maintain control under the worst possible set of circumstances in Republican political history in Virginia, which was 2017, they feel confident that there's 5 or 6 seats that they're going to pick up and that the Democrats' chances of taking control are nil, because it's like they're saying they won in this cycle everything they could possibly win. But of course, right, Tommie, we don't know what's going to happen between now and then, right?
You're absolutely right. However, I've talked to both Democratic and Republican operatives, and you're right. From what I'm hearing from the Republicans, they think that the next cycle there are probably about 5 to 7 seats that may or may not come up for election, and they're thinking that they're going to be held by Republicans. So whatever momentum the Democrats have right now, they're not going to have that in 2 years. However, all the Democratic operatives I've talked to say, nope, we're this close. We want control. We're going to get it in 2 years.
It's going to be interesting. I just got this text here from Chris Saxman, former House member listening to our show, also the president of the nonpartisan Virginia Free. Saxman says, hey, love hearing Tommie McNeil, so you got to plug there. He also says committees have always been proportional by party and by congressional district. It'll be 12 to 10 in each committee, 2 per congressional district, as close as possible. 11 congressional districts equal 22 seats on committees. Can you interpret what he means by that?
Say that one more time.
All right. Saxman says committees have always been proportional by party and by congressional district. It'll be 12 to 10 in each committee, 2 per congressional district, as close as possible. 11 congressional districts equals 22 seats on committees.
I'm not sure.
Me either. Saxman, we'll have to get Saxman on and he'll have to help us with that one. I'm not sure exactly what he means, but if there's ever a parliamentarian expert, Chris Saxman would be it, wouldn't it, Tommie? Right?
You're absolutely right.
All right, Tommie McNeil, live in Richmond. Thanks for being with us here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Longtime veteran radio news reporter Tommie McNeil giving us the inside scoop of what's going on in Richmond. And Tommie, we'll see you very, very soon. You have a safe trip back to D.C. Thanks for all your hard work. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, John.
Very, very
all right,
soon.
Nice talking to you.